Hello, this is how to use the Windows application WinSCP to connect to a Linux SSH server and then transfer files. This is a Windows 11 computer. This is the official website of the software winscp.net. I searched on Google for WinSCP. SCP comes from the protocol of copying files over SSH when SFTP is not available in your SSH server. Let's download this software. If you have ever used PuTTY, there's great chances that you have also encountered WinSCP. I'm always going for the portable executable. You could install the application, but I'm just unzipping it using portable executable. C, temp, bin, save, open file location, right click, show more options, and I have 7-zip installed, or you could extract all. It's a zip file. Okay, so the new home of the software is c:\temp\bin\winscp and then a version and then portable. The executable is called winscp.exe. Let me use a better file manager than Windows Explorer. I'm using Total Commander. And this is how it looks like. There's a file with extension exe and a file with extension com. The com one is for interacting from a terminal from cmd.exe, and the exe has graphical user interface. I have double-clicked on winscp.exe. This is how it looks like. Parts of the dialog on how to connect to a remote SSH server look very similar to the dialog from PuTTY to connect to remote SSH server. So let's find a Linux computer. We are now connected to a Linux machine. This is Kubuntu 25.10. This is a fresh installation. It doesn't have the OpenSSH server installed. We can see that there's the OpenSSH client, but not the OpenSSH server. So let's install that. apt search. Let's see the name of the package that we need to install. I'm searching for the word OpenSSH in the name of the package. And there's OpenSSH SFTP server and OpenSSH server. Hopefully the package OpenSSH server will install OpenSSH SFTP server. Let's prove this. Install the package OpenSSH-server. And we can see that one of its dependencies, one of the dependencies of the deb package OpenSSH-server is OpenSSH-SFTP-server. So this is indeed what we want to install. It's creating cryptography for SSH. It's starting the SSH systemd server. Let's make sure that it's running. Okay, it says that it will start when we restart the computer. And now it's correctly running and listening on TCP port 22 on all network interface cards of type IPv4 and IPv6. Since the SSH server is listening on a TCP port, let's make sure that the firewall is accepting incoming connections. And the firewall by default is called UFW and is inactive by default, so it doesn't filter anything, doesn't do anything. So this is what we wanted. The OpenSSH server to be listening on TCP port 22. And then from the Windows machine, we will try to connect to this Linux machine. And now from the Windows 11 computer, we're using WinSCP in graphical user interface mode. And we're trying to connect to that SSH server. As we saw, by installing the SSH server, we also installed the SFTP OpenSSH server. You should always prefer the protocol SFTP when possible, when it works, when the server has support for SFTP. And the SCP is just a backup when connecting using SSH. When connecting using SSH, you could choose between SFTP and SCP if the OpenSSH server supports both protocols, but again, do prefer SFTP as it's just better all around. The other protocols, FTP, WebDAV, and Amazon S3. FTP is another protocol, not SSH, uses by default TCP port 21, 20. WebDAV is actually writing files and uploading files over the HTTP or HTTPS using the HTTP verb put. And Amazon S3 is AWS, Amazon Web Services, the storage offerings from AWS. Okay, so SFTP, the IPv4 address of the computer, port 22, username, password, and you could also save the settings. They will be available here in the left tree view. Let's actually do that. You can also create a desktop shortcut, and next time it will be available in here. It by default does not save the password, which is an okay decision. And then you can just log in. First time that you connect to the SSH server, the SSH client will ask you if you are being the victim of a SSH man-in-the-middle attack. Because the SSH server and SSH client does use cryptography, can use strong cryptography algorithms and key lengths, but the initial handshake when the SSH keys, the public keys are being exchanged, you don't really know to which computer you're actually connecting. So this is the second when you're vulnerable. And in order not to be vulnerable, you should connect to the SSH server in a different way. Ask for the administrator person of the Linux SSH server if this fingerprint is indeed of the SSH server that you're trying to connect to. But in 99% of cases, this is not an issue. There's no man-in-the-middle attack, so you could just accept this key. Because we have connected to the SSH server using a saved credential, in WinSCP. By default, it offered to not save the password. Right now, it asks for the password of the user, of the Linux user N. And this is it. Right now, we're connected to the SSH server. On the right pane on the WinSCP application, we have the remote computer, and on the other panes, we have the local computer. Let's create a temporary directory for today. So that's 12.22. And let's open this directory also in WinSCP. Let's see how we do that. How do we change directory? Okay, like this, and we can transfer files either in orthodox file manager, twin pane file manager way. This used to work previously, so F5. And it says that we're copying files from Linux to Windows. And we have the chance of deciding how the file should be transferred. The way the file is being transferred is about the Windows end of line character. This combo box allows you to select if the file is a text file, then the end of line character will be replaced from Linux style \n to Windows style \r\n. But nowadays, Windows doesn't really force people to use \r\n exclusively. Files using \n work correctly on Windows, they work correctly on notepad.exe, work correctly on other more advanced text editors in Visual Studio, in Visual Studio Code, all of the Microsoft first-party compilers, Visual C++, C#, .NET, .NET Framework, etc. do support \n source code line terminators. The Microsoft's web browsers have always supported \n line terminators for HTML files. So what I would actually do is I would stop using text type transfer. I'm not sure how that is being done. Transfer mode binary. Yeah, also, I'm not sure if changing the name when files come from Linux towards Windows is still needed, but it might be needed for your scenario. Maybe you're using FAT16 file system, maybe you want a partition that's compatible with older operating systems and you want Windows style 8.3 file names. And when you're traversing a file from Linux to Windows, yes, the chmod bits will be lost. Okay. Let's see how this thing actually works. So it selected binary. I'm not exactly sure why that is, because the default is the default setting, which default should switch between binary and text, and the file has the extension txt. Yeah, so the default transfer mode is called a transfer setting preset. named default, and this, from what I see, always transfers files as binary, which is what I would do. Okay, let's look at the file that we have just copied. There's inside WinSCP a file viewer, F3. Doesn't work, F4. So there's no WinSCP viewer, but there is a WinSCP editor, which allows you to edit files straight on the SSH server without copying to the Windows machine, editing it, and then copying back to the SSH computer. Let's see if saving actually works. Save, Ctrl S. And it says that it's doing a transfer operation in this view at the bottom. Okay, let's look at the file that has been transferred using a hex editor. So the line ends with before substituting. So this character is \n, and there's a space before that. So indeed, when the a.txt file has been copied from the Linux computer, the home directory of user n, towards the Windows computer, the temporary directory, no end-of-line character was changed. On both the Linux computer and the Windows computer, line terminators continue to be \n, which is hexadecimal 0A. Okay. What else can we do? We can copy larger files. We can copy files not just using Orthodox File Manager shortcuts, so F5, but also using drag and drop. And also using copy paste. Right click, copy to clipboard, right click, paste from clipboard. And PNG files are binary files that get copied correctly, get displayed correctly both on Linux and on Windows. Let's delete the last file that we have copied and see if we can copy using drag and drop from WinSCP, the remote tab, the remote half of the application, the pane, towards a file manager running on Windows. And it doesn't work like that. Right click, copy, right click, paste. And using copy paste does work. But I do not see this dialog. Okay, so maybe my decision gets cached. So the first time that I copy a file, I am presented with a dialog. No. So I do not know. So the dialog was the one that asks you how you want the file copied, how you want the file name to be improved, how you want the end of line the end of line characters to be changed, how you want the other properties of the files on Linux to be represented on Windows, such as the chmod bits. Okay, let's see if we can copy multiple files. Drag and drop. Can we delete files on Windows? Right click, delete, F8. Moves files to recycle bin. It doesn't completely delete those. And now if I drag it and drop to the Total Commander window, copy paste worked, but there was some intermediate artifact, intermediate file there. It says copy one files, which is wrong because we're copying 5 files. And some intermediate SCP-03913 directory exists. And then when you refresh the Total Commander directory, the right thing has happened, which is the 5 files have been copied and there's no intermediate hidden directory. Okay, and this is what you use WinSCP for mostly. You want to see the directory and file structure on Linux. You want to be able to create directories, delete files and directories on Linux, move files around, and then the most important part is you doing some synchronization work between Windows and Linux. You want either to copy files or to copy entire directories from Linux to Windows or the other way around from Linux to Windows. Let's see how copying a huge directory works. Proceed in background, minimize and skip. Okay, so that was just the preliminary dialog where it's computing the files that should be copied and their sizes. And after that starts the second progress dialog where it's actually showing how it's copying each file. And you have the option of not overworking the SSH server. You can put a limit, an upper limit to the speed with which you're downloading files from the SSH server. This might come in handy sometimes. Once finished, it can shut down the computer. Wow. Let's look at the speeds. I can see even, I'm not sure what these speeds are. If the files are larger, the speeds increase. I'm seeing 42 megabytes per second, which is way over 100 megabit per second. Do remember that when you're doing SSH operations like we're doing right now, there is an overhead which is created by the encryption and the safety measures that are applied inside the SSH tunnel and connection that we have to the Linux machine. At least the cryptography, and maybe there's also a compression algorithm which is used by default. So it's not just plain copying bytes from Linux to Windows. There's an entire tunnel, there's probably compression, there's cryptography. That's why you're not just getting the maximum possible speed of the NVMe drives and of the I know, gigabit Ethernet connection that you have between machines. Okay, let's stop this copying. We're not actually interested into the content of the directory Qt. We're just seeing how WinSCP handles a directory with a large number of files and also large files in there. Cancel. Let's delete the directory. In Total Commander, I can delete with skipping the recycle bin. That's Shift Delete, which actually deletes permanently without using the recycle bin. Yes. Yes. Let's see how WinSCP handles hidden directories and files in Linux. In order to show the hidden files, there's the right pane, which is called remote, and the left pane, which is called local. In the right pane, in the right half of the file manager, the one that's called remote, at the status bar, there's this text, 24 hidden files and directories. Click to show hidden files. And now I can see the hidden directories, ~/.local/.cache, the hidden files, ~/.bashrc. Okay, let's look a bit at the main menu of WinSCP. Similar to other twin pane orthodox file managers such as Total Commander, there's a help menu. There's for the right pane, in this case remote, a menu. And for the local, which is the left pane, different actions will be available because these two panes are very, very different. One is a remote SSH connection, Linux, chmod, hidden files by just having a dot at the start of the file name, whereas the other pane is a Windows directory where there's no chmod bits, the security on files is applied differently, hiding files is different, etc. So the actions are going to be different. You can navigate by just providing the full path, like this, and like this. Of course, you can navigate usually with your arrow keys, up, down, enter, backspace, page down, page up. Some directories have many files, and it will take some time for the content of the directory to be shown in WinSCP. So navigating is a bit laggy in over SSH. Okay, the columns that are shown by default on Linux are available here. Remote columns, and they end with owner. You could also display the group, and the owner is not that visible in this case. You can resize the width of the individual columns by double-clicking on the separator between column headings. Or you can just move these separators as you wish. You can rename files or directories in the Windows style by just clicking and then clicking. So no double click, but long click. There's a context menu where you can rename. You can delete with F8 by right-clicking and then delete F8. And there's additional operations that you also have in most orthodox twin pane file managers, such as synchronizing between panes, searching. So searching would be Alt F7 in Total Commander. And Alt F7 in WinSCP. Synchronizing between is which? Commands synchronize dirs in Total Commander. Commands synchronize in WinSCP. So these are advanced things. I usually do all of the operations that can be done on Linux without going towards the Windows machine straight on the Linux machine. I'm going to connect in text user interface mode using SSH, and then if needed, I'm going to use the file manager Midnight Commander there. Or I'm going to connect in graphical user interface mode using the RDP protocol, remote desktop protocol, for instance, using the XRDP server, or using the VNC protocol, using, for instance, the Tiger VNC server. And WinSCP, I only use it for the moment where I need to copy files from Linux to Windows or back. My usage of WinSCP is extremely limited, but you can do a ton of things by remaining in WinSCP. You can navigate to directories such as the home directory. You can see the root. In case new files appear in the current directory over SSH and the files are not immediately shown in WinSCP, there's the refresh Ctrl-R command and button. You can have multiple tabs. Let's see how that works. Tab, new tab. Can we have a second tab inside the same, on the same server? Yeah, so tabs correspond to new SSH connections. Or not really. Where can I see the other tab? So they're shown in here. There's a toolbar for tabs. Yeah, I would expect to have the tabs here on top of the pane, like I have them in Total Commander. Let's disconnect an SSH connection. And now we have just one tab. Okay. And then you can have, you can perform additional complex commands on Linux files. There's, where is it? From the main menu, files, and then file custom commands. And you can, for instance, touch, which means create a file that's empty. You can compress using tar or gzip. You can uncompress. There's a minimal terminal, which is this guy. Open terminal, Ctrl-Shift-T. It says that it's not a full SSH terminal because it doesn't support commands that require user input. But for that, WinSCP has integration with PuTTY, so you can start a PuTTY session, which is a SSH client connection, a terminal, towards the SSH server. So this would be all. This is the Windows application WinSCP that allows you to transfer files from Windows to Linux and from Linux to Windows using the SSH server that can be installed on Linux. This is how I use it. There's more bells and features than just copying files between operating systems. And if you have ever used PuTTY to connect from Windows to Linux, there's chances that you will also want to use WinSCP to transfer files between Linux and Windows. Thank you.